Have you guys ever thought about changing your appearance to get a different outcome? This recently came to me as I was looking through some like interview tips on social, and there was a creator talking about how you have to adjust your appearance to be less threatening if you're conventionally beautiful, or kind of like dialing up if you're meeting with like certain people, as long as you're obviously like meeting some professional parameters. And have you kind of noticed this trend or this like discourse around capitalizing on your looks or tweaking your looks to get a certain outcome?
There's a lot that we can talk
I
about
know.
when it comes to this topic, but to answer shortly, yes, I think that it would be almost stupid not to be highly aware how this influences the way that people treat you. And it's a tricky topic because you almost benefit from understanding where you stand in this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as a younger woman with blonde hair, I have mostly been thinking about this from the point of view of how do I enter certain rooms without having my looks affect me negatively, in
Mm-hmm.
the sense that I need to be taken seriously. I don't want to be assumed lower level that I am. And there's a whole joke around how in the creative world, when you're a CD, you're always wearing a hat, or you're always wearing big not big sunglasses, but
Big
big
glasses
glasses,
and a beard.
um, and a beard usually. But I do think that even in that meme of everyone has the big glasses, I think that actually is a lot of people just adding things to their look to communicate
Look the
something.
part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when we talk about the social world, like pretty privilege isn't just about getting like free drinks or better service. It's like algorithmic, and it's baked into like who gets the views, who gets the brand deals, who gets to be considered to be aspirational. It's like your face becomes a part of your career capital, like whether it's as a creator or you're working in the industry. And here's the thing, like the privilege isn't just about being pretty. It's about being pretty in a way that the internet wants you to be, or like your workplace wants you to be, or whatever. And there's a very narrow like visual aesthetic that gets rewarded, and it can leave people kind of performing beauty instead of expressing it in their own terms.
With pretty privilege in the context of social, I watched probably like 20 videos before recording this around different takes. And there was this creator called Vic Path who was talking about sort of the three tiers to pretty privilege. And it's kind of like, and it's a little harsh saying like, oh, if you're around like maybe a 7 or an 8, you're like getting that first basic tier of like maybe people assuming positive things about you or being nice to you or listening what you have to say. And as you go like higher up, that's when you start capitalizing on your beauty in the form of free meals and free drinks and maybe even free services in exchange for you posting your hairdresser on social. And then you have the sort of the highest tier, which is where you can basically make a lifestyle out of it. So you would say you're like your models or Instagram models or those types of people. And there is this really really great book around it called Very Important People that I just recommended to the group, actually, that talks about this journalist. She was sort of like tall enough and pretty enough to be in those sort of promoter cycles and like being invited to these things, and she wrote a really fascinating take on what it is to be on the inside and the power dynamics of it all. Have you guys ever used your pretty privilege to like get things, or have you been giving things because of your looks?
For sure. I think that especially when I moved to Los Angeles, when I first moved, I definitely got to experience some of those moments where you are getting free dinners at really expensive restaurants. And I got pulled in by some of my friends or new friends that I had made early on when I moved. But I feel like I have a lot of examples where I can definitely pinpoint that there's no other reason why I would have deserved anything, where I've gotten something for free. But a lot of times it's through friends And I feel like I can point out a couple of friends that have the extreme level of pretty privilege. I know you shared a Substack with us about the topic of this whole world with the promoters and how this social media piece that has kind of exploded this space,
Hmm.
because it used to just be exclusive to models,
Yeah.
and now we're seeing all these women who are pretty by some standard,
Yeah.
but not exactly models, get these things for free, and they are kind of surfing through this world. But there's a lot of negatives and tricky parts to it, I feel like. But in LA, it's a lot more heightened than in Finland, where I'm from, because here you even have some clubs and some restaurants who pretty blatantly won't let certain people in.
And what's interesting is that before the social became a thing, like that's how you would kind of take advantage of the pretty privilege, where you could use that to get to places for free or get free food or drinks or whatever. But like now, due to social, like it's kind of like blown up a lot, and I feel like pretty privilege can affect you in like many different ways than it didn't used to. Like you can, just because you're pretty, you can get the algorithm on your side, because people will stay looking at you just because you're beautiful for more than 3 seconds, or maybe
Hmm.
they're kind of give more opportunities for you to share your message just
Hmm.
because of the way you look, even if you're not like a model. Just because you're on the prettier side, you will kind of get your like foot like kind of on the door like easier. So that might mean that you're going to get more likes, you're going to get more followers, you're going to have a easier time to build your community on social than if you're not able to take advantage of pretty privilege.
And it's so heightened today because we all have to have personal brands, and we're all looking at ourselves on screens all day on Zooms. And so I think it becomes even more heightened, the role that looks play in every single
Mm-hmm.
facet of our lives. I do want to quickly kind of explain the dynamics between sort of the capitalizing on beauty and how we're seeing it actually happen here, because I don't think, maybe like if we have our listeners in Europe might not know, but there is this sort of there's this system where you have club promoters and restaurant promoters whose only job is to get groups of really beautiful young women to attend these clubs and restaurants, so that then rich men spend a lot of money, like 10, 20, 50K on bottle service at clubs or these like very expensive dinners, and sort of your looks are the price of access there. And I was thinking about this a lot. If there is no party without the women, there's no full restaurant table without the women, and yet these women there are actually being paid the least out of like everybody they're benefiting. And so like that's something that I thought of, because there's the one side, oh yeah, you get to experience everything glamorous, but these people like would not have jobs, and this restaurant wouldn't make money if you're not there. So like, why aren't we paying these women?
I actually saw this
Yeah, that's
video from a
crazy.
creator this week. She said that she left her 9 to 5 to just fully like be like one of those like bottle service girls. I'm like, I have no idea why that even came on my For You page. I'm
Oh,
like,
but
this is
that's a
really odd.
job. It's
But
a
no,
pretty
but
privileged job, but they don't
yeah,
get
and
paid.
it's like, and then I went into the comment section. I was like, how much are you actually getting paid? And there were a lot of people who were saying like, yeah, that they reap off the benefits of their beauty by being a bottle girl, like in their 20s and early 30s or whatever, and then later on switch to like 9 to 5 office job.
Yeah, and there's a real pipeline from like bottle service girl to then like being married to maybe one of the restaurateurs. We've seen that on
Mm.
social as well. Melissa Wood
Mm-hmm.
Health. She is an ex bottle girl from Tao, and now she's married to one of the owners of Tao Group. So
Oh, I
I think,
didn't know that.
yep, because I'm like, on one hand, the feminist in me is saying, well, you know what? It's still a patriarchal world. And so use whatever you have to make money. And like, at least, like, if you're being objectified for your beauty, at least make money off of it. But then also at the same time, are like, if I play into these things, am I like perpetuating? And I think a great example of that is, you know, the sort of like the polemic and the scandal around Emrata's book a couple of years ago, was because she's always been capitalizing on the male gaze and perpetuating and making money off of it, and then she came out with a book that's sort of criticizing being objectified while she
Mm-hmm.
objectifies
Yeah.
herself. And so like I don't really know what the answer to this is, but like I was like, Emrata, I don't really want you to be the beacon of like feminism. Like you're not the spokesperson we we chose.
Yeah, that was a huge conversation, but like I have so many mixed feelings about this, like you, because yeah, I'm like, go off, girl. And then
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'm like, this is insane.
Hmm.
Mm.
And I think in the beginning I was just very curious, like, what is this thing? Because I was, like I said, exposed to some of it through my friends. But one of the craziest examples that's not exactly, there's, I know that there's an app maybe in New York where models can get stuff for free, like very
Hmm.
transactionally.
Yeah.
But there's also now a dating app. I haven't used it, obviously, having been in a relationship and married for so long. But my friends were telling me that there's an app called Blush that's gaining a lot of popularity in LA specifically, I believe. And the app is transactional in the way that these men can give the women that they're swiping and wanting to date roses, but all of these so-called roses have monetary value. And
Huh.
so I went and saw one of my friends and we went to get coffees, and she's like, no, I got this. And I was like, no, I got this. And she's like, don't worry, it's all free. And when I started to ask, what do you mean, it's because she had a lot of these credits from all these men that had given her roses. So basically, you can use this monetary rose to get stuff at places like Alfred Coffee. And I was blown away. Like, I kind of found it hilarious that I was drinking a coffee that was paid by some guy somewhere.
Paid by
But
patriarchy.
no, exactly. And I was kind of like, I'm doing this for the plot. Like,
Did it
I'm going
taste
to let
Oh,
good?
for
you
sure.
pay just so that I can tell the story. But also, I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I then asked, if you actually have to see this person in order to get access to these
Hmm.
funds, and you can even swipe left on the person and still accept it, I believe. I That's what I was told.
Wow.
But I think that's like the most extreme
I
sort of
have an even more extreme
example.
version.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, there have you heard of financial domination? So there
Yes,
are
I
yeah,
have.
yeah. So there are a lot
I
of
want to do that.
there are a lot of women and a lot of I don't know if you could call them creators, but women who are like financial dominatrixes, where their mode of sort of dominating is just kind of like humiliating men virtually by making them pay for things. So basically they're like kind of like just like insulting them. Like it could be just like a chat type of thing, like and the men just Venmo their money for like different transactions, from paying their rent to maybe taking a trip to doing your Botox. And the men get off on being told to pay for things. So there isn't necessarily any other type of like sexual transaction. And the only like transaction there is actually telling the men, like, give me the money.
And why is my mind thinking how easy it would just be to build like a AI bot to do it for you as
Yeah, no,
well?
for real.
Hmm.
And
But
I
but
would
this
probably
creeps
do
me
that.
out at the
It
I
same
creeps me
time.
out, but
I used to have a friend who actually did that, and I had never heard of that. And it was like, and I think there was I think there was something like that on their right like thumb. They would wear like a white ring or something like that. I don't remember what it was, like how you could like recognize one. Like, but she told me about that, and I was like, because like she had like a new glasses, new dress, and everything, and we were students, and I'm like, hey, like how do you have all these like, I was like, wow, that's so cool, like like nice clothes, whatever. And she's like, yeah, like, they're paid by this guy who, like, I just asked money from. I'm like, what do you mean? And like, there was nothing like sexual. Like,
hmm.
she didn't send any photos. There was none of that. She would just say like, hey, it's my birthday. Send me $500. Hey, like, I want to do this and that. And there, sometimes she would even go shopping and be like, hey, you have to come and pay for this. And like,
But that's a
we would just
sugar
do that.
daddy. Let's
No, but
just
like otherwise they didn't spend
No,
time together. They
if you
didn't do
meant they
anything.
never meet.
No,
They
yeah,
never meet.
like
Like you don't have to like I think it's different than like having to, because I think there's an expectation of a service a lot of time with the
yeah,
sugar
that's true.
baby
yeah,
sugar daddy
That's true.
relationships. And I think I'm kind of like, when I heard about this, I was like, this is actually like whoever invented this is brilliant, because
Yeah,
it's
this
like
is
it's
brilliant. A
like it's
woman
like
invented that.
yeah, like you just sent a Venmo request and
Yeah,
that is making you money. But then there's always that sort of icky layer of like
it's still
power and
weird.
control, and I think it
Yeah,
might like slip into that pretty quickly.
yeah,
I don't know if we should
exactly.
like just like bring this to onto the corporate
Yeah.
side and like make it more of a
Yes.
thing of like telling telling people like, hey, like you have to give me a raise today by
Yeah.
5 p.m.
Telling
end
your
of
boss,
day.
this is how much money I need by end
um
of day.
Speaking of corporate environments, I also watched quite a few videos that were talking about like, ever notice that there are not a lot of, and I don't, and this is not to judge the women who are in leadership positions at big companies. There are not a lot of attractive women not a lot of women and not a lot of attractive women in very senior positions. And maybe it's more about like they're actually not allowing women to present themselves in a certain way the higher up they climb the ladder, or if you do, you get punished and you don't get moved forward. There were a lot of lawyers and a lot of women in financial jobs that said like, actually, like my pretty privilege became a hindrance because I was not taken
Mm.
seriously. I would get hit on, and then when I would have to reject people, that would affect my career negatively. What do you guys think?
I mean, I totally think that that's a thing. I feel like even me saying that, I'm conscious of how I enter a room, and I think it would be kind of stupid if you didn't think about the way you're presenting yourself. It's somewhat connected to this. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's still a lot of conversation about that. It is sad if that's the reality, that your looks would essentially contribute to how high you can go. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think that it affects the way people behave, and you might be exposed to uncomfortable situations like someone's hitting on you. I'm sure we all have a story, even in the work environment, where
Mm-hmm.
that has happened, which is crazy, and sad, and just a thing that we have to navigate, right? So I
It's
think
like
it's
we all
definitely a
have,
thing.
yeah, we all have had to turn down a person in the workplace for romantic advances, while also navigating fact of like, oh, but I don't want to make him feel embarrassed or make him feel bad, because if
Exactly.
he feels like that, he's going to like push me out of the projects and things that I want to be working on. And like navigating that is certainly difficult. And I also think like there's this the other side of it too is like, I've heard of like, I have some friends who have been almost like excluded in workplaces because they happen to be beautiful, and I find that crazy because I don't know, like I would never feel like I'd want to be mean to another woman just because I find them to be prettier than me. That's like a crazy thought to me, and when I heard that this was still happening today, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, that's crazy. And when I say that I think it's good that people are conscious of these things, I feel like I mean it more from the point of view of like, it's a real thing. So pretending that it doesn't exist
Mhm.
will end up hurting everybody
Mhm.
more. But at the same time, it's one of those things that I wish wasn't the case. And
Mhm.
I wish we could just do and be exactly how we are. And I don't think it changes like who you are, but there is a benefit to understanding that it affects you
Mhm.
in some way or the other, and affects the person next to you.
Mhm.
And so that's one way you can be conscious of how you can also support people or talk about it. Quite honest.
I actually have a story from like, this was all the way back in 2017 when I was interviewing for my second job in tech, and I was interviewing with this Finnish startup where like everybody, very much like, obviously like a lot of men, everybody wearing hoodies, like very like engineer culture, right? And I'm very girly naturally, I like to present myself nice, like in professional settings, like wear colorful clothes and jewelry and makeup. I went into all of those interviews like fresh face, wearing my glasses, like very much like I was, because I was afraid like, oh, like if I show
Right.
up like super feminine, I wouldn't fit in with the culture, or they would think like that I'm not serious. And it's like crazy to think that, but I have adjusted myself like that in the past for those types of situations.
I even remember myself, like when I first started at my first ad agency in Finland, that I was kind of stressing over like how am I supposed to dress? Like this is my first like office kind of job, and I think I just put like a regular like I don't know black blazer, a black pants, like a white tee, like
Me
something like
too,
super
black blazer
neutral.
and same agency.
Yeah, because I was just like so nervous. I'm like I didn't want to kind of like wear anything that would kind of grab too much attention. And I just wanted
Hmm.
to kind of assess the situation. And I remember because Yanni was there at the same time for the first few months, and I remember that like you really stood out to me by just dressing like so feminine, and like it was you kind of I hate the word boss lady, but like so I'm not going to use that, but it's kind of like you just seem so powerful in your feminine appearance, and the heels and the skirts and the cute sets you were wearing.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh wow, like you can still lean into your feminine side and like dress like in a way that feels true to you, while working in this kind of corporate environment. That was
Yeah.
very inspiring to me, and I kind of felt like I was now allowed to also wear skirts and also wear like heels and things like that, because I felt like it was such a like a dudesy environment in many ways that I would have to like dress like a dude, which was not the case.
Yeah, this is interesting because I have gotten this comment that I've embraced my feminine in the way I dress at work, and people have been inspired in both Finland and the US. And my instant reaction to it is like, me? Feminine? Which is interesting. But for those of you that don't know, like Mel mentioned, I did work in the same agency in Finland for a little bit, a long time ago. But at the time, there was actually a pretty strong sort of visual stereotype of a lot of men who worked in the creative department, and everyone was wearing sneakers and everyone was wearing all black.
Yes,
And
And
they still are.
they
they
still
still
are,
are.
and that I think is common no matter what country you're
Hmm.
in. But I eventually actually went from an intern to one of the partners,
Hmm.
and I was, I think, the second woman but the youngest partner in the
Hmm.
agency. And I feel like I've been lucky in the sense that I have embraced my style and who I am while being able to have a successful career and even get access to places that maybe a
Hmm.
lot of women didn't have, whether it's, being one of the partners and all that. But I think in the creative world, it's a little bit different because
Hmm.
when you're showing who you are through fashion and style, that can also help you. So I feel like it actually has, in the end, helped me because it tells about me.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
follow fashion, I am always in the know about the newest thing. And a lot of times, even now, that's a conversation or something that other people will point out, and it almost makes me a more credible creative, because I know what the latest brand that's popping up is. It may not look masculine, it may not be something that everyone knows, but that has started to almost like work in my advantage as well. But when Mel says I'm wearing skirts and heels, you can imagine almost like an office stiletto, but it's never that. I do actually I am quite conservative in terms of, what I wear. You won't see me in a low neckline. You won't see me in anything that kind of goes too far. I mix a lot of masculine with the feminine, but it's actually worked in my advantage to show who I am through my style.
And I think it's moreover also like things like, you always have like blown out long hair, you wear makeup, your nails are always done. There's like little like I think like
Yeah,
those types of
totally.
touches that especially like especially like in Finland, that's like a very pragmatic type of culture, is not always the case. I've like I've in for many many years now like just showed up as my full self to office whenever there has been an office. I've also had a few remote roles, and I do get quite a lot of comments on my style and my dressing because like I wear a lot of colors, a lot of
Yeah.
dresses. I don't really like distinguish between evening wear or or daytime looks. And so, and then one of the things, I remember there was this woman who does a lot of speaking engagements who said, I always wear a really memorable, bold piece on stage because everybody can recognize you at the conference after and come talk to you. And I thought that was a brilliant advice. I'm actually
Totally.
I'm speaking
Yes.
at a conference in a few weeks, and I'm definitely going to do that. Um, I I think we can get to our pitches for this episode, and I was wondering if you had something around pretty privilege and brands and how that could maybe be used in social.
I don't have anything for brands, but the one thing that I did want to mention and make a bigger point about is even when we talk about the algorithms favoring pretty, there's also a problem with diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been talked about in channels like TikTok specifically, but I would actually want some of the social platforms to do something about this. Be
Mm-hmm.
more transparent about what changes they are making. Like I want Adam Mosseri on Instagram to talk about some of the technical things that they are doing to make sure that they are looking at content and letting the content that people want to resonate with drive. But at the same time, I think we need to support diversity in a
Mm-hmm.
way when we
Yeah.
know that the technology, just like with AI, we know there was a problem with that. It's still a
Yeah.
problem. And so I want to see some of the social platforms come up with solutions, whether it's specific creator programs or tactical changes that they are testing on the platforms to diversify the content we see and kind of wipe out the negative side of pretty privilege that's affecting the content that we're seeing.
I'm gonna do a live experiment here. I'm putting on TikTok a search for beautiful woman. I want to see what comes as top. So they are, I think they're all white women.
There you go.
All of the
Exactly.
videos, all of the videos here, they're all white women.
What if I would just put woman? Let me see what comes up.
It probably also is all white.
Weirdly enough, there's a few black men and like a few white women.
Okay.
I guess it was black men talking about white women, but anyway, I mean women. But anyway, so, because my soul was also like kind of reversing the pretty privilege from a brand perspective, and like
Mm.
I know that brands highlight diversity, and they're oftentimes thinking like diversity in terms of like, oh, like we have people from different backgrounds or different, sexual orientation and skin color and all these things. But I don't think it's necessarily something they think about consciously, whether you know you're going for people who aren't necessarily like objectively attractive, and you're not going for the prettiest ones because it's such a subconscious bias that we
Mm-hmm.
have. So we might still be kind of aware about going for diverse type of people, but not diverse type of beauty. And
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm.
that's like a new filter that we could all kind of add into our lenses,
I
just to
saw
make
a
sure
creator
that we're
talk
not
about
just
that.
going for the prettiest
Yeah, I
creators.
love
Yeah,
that take.
I saw a creator talk about that, saying that in a couple of years, like the next aesthetic trend is gonna be like being a little ugly or looking a
I,
little bit
I
like,
saw that. I
yeah,
saw
yes.
that.
And on that notion, like if we turn this on our head, I do have a brand idea. I want to see Elf Cosmetics do a rage bait campaign where they're doing makeup tutorials not to look too pretty in the workplace or being taken seriously. I think doing that in a very fun, like ironic twist would ring really true for the brand.
No, that'd be
That wraps up
amazing.
our episode of House of Content. Please share this with people you would think would like this episode, and we will see you next week.